1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Royal Blue Podcast Soundcheck. Monday Show Live. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Monday Show Live.
Did you watch it?
Well, I didn't watch it.
Hello and welcome to the Royal Blue Podcast. It is the Monday show. It is the first show following on from Saturday's Merseyside derby. We are live on the Royal Blue YouTube channel. I am your host Ian Croll, and joining me in the Royal Blue studio today to talk all things Everton, we have Joe Thomas. Joe, how was your weekend? All good?
Well, I mean, it wasn't. Saturday could have gone a lot better.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, I mean, that was frustrating and disappointing. And I tell you what, I write some absolutely fantastic match reports.
Wow.
When
Blowing his own trumpet.
for Everton wins at Anfield that just haven't happened yet. It's probably the most galling part of this job for me because look, like, obviously Everton have won, as we all know, we don't want to keep hearing it, but it's obviously such a rare occurrence. I know that, like, to some extent it's almost the biggest game of the season for me from a professional point of view, because I know that if Everton go to Anfield and they do get a win, I'll be writing history. So I have to take it seriously. I have to spend days kind of thinking about what I'm going to do, and I like to try and, with this game, I like to try and plot that out in advance so I know what I'm going to. So I'm not going to get lost in the occasion, because it would be such an, if we got to see that and fans in the stadium as well, I have to try and do that justice. That is my job, and because of that work that I put into it, I put some great pieces together. But my only experiences.
The verdicts we never see.
My only experiences so far is having to just absolutely rip them up after. Well, sometimes it gets to 90 minutes. Sometimes
put them on file.
Sometimes it's even earlier than that. As was to some extent felt like it was going to be the case after half an hour at the weekend, although it didn't quite materialise like that. Everyone fought back well. So it could have gone better, because everybody's watching this, and we could have all been reading this wonderful flourish that I'd produced, and we could all be celebrating long into this week. But obviously that's not the case, and we'll get into the bones as to why it happened. But my Sunday was all right. It was all right. Again, could have been better if Saturday had gone better, but it didn't. So we're here.
Okay, well, the main thing is that you're out here, Joe. That is the main thing.
Feels quite rare, doesn't it?
Yeah, to be fair, you've you're just always so busy out and about. Obviously, covering Everton is a busy job, as Chris knows, and press conferences and following the under-21s and everything else that goes along with that. You're just a busy man.
That's it. I was there at Finch Farm on Friday watching the under-21s, which is why I couldn't do that show after the press conference, and quite enjoyed it actually. Jonathan Nsangu, 15 years old, making his debut for the under-21s. There was, I tried to check, there wasn't a 21-year-old on the pitch, so he didn't play against someone 6 years older than him, but still, that's two age groups set up, part of the England set up. Written a piece on him yesterday, and obviously we will discuss the Merseyside derby in great detail, but we will also want to move away from it, and that's maybe one of the positives behind the scenes at Everton that we can kind of focus on this week and try to over the weekend as well. Some good players playing for mainly in the under 18s that are stepping up. Some promising players there, but let's get onto the senior team when we can.
Another busy man, Chris Beesley. How are things, Chris? All good?
Well, as Joe said, very wet as well on Saturday. I think as we all were, having to get to and from Anfield. But yeah, I'm just glad that I heard that interesting story there about obviously the young lads coming through. I just hope everything's all right in the fridge front for Joe. Well, is it settled in now?
Oh yeah, that's a good question.
Well, I missed last Monday because I was getting a fridge delivered. Yeah, that's
the all important question. Did it get delivered?
It did get delivered. All was fine, and I was sorry to miss the show.
Yeah.
Okay, well, today's agenda. It is a full, in-depth Merseyside derby reaction show, Everton's approach and tactics, the negatives, the positives, and of course, Darren England's. We will cover it all. We've also got you covered with our official sponsor, NordVPN, the fastest VPN in the world, and premium cybersecurity are just some of the benefits you get with NordVPN's app. So, to get the best discounts off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/EFC. The link will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. There is no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee, and the link is in the podcast episode description. As always, give us a thumbs up, drop us a like, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Support is greatly appreciated. Obviously, we will come on to performance and the main part of Saturday, but I just want to address and kind of just get it out the way first. The referee's performance. Joe, I'll come on to you first, and then I'll come on to you with it, Chris. David Moyes, he was clearly visibly annoyed by some of the referee's decisions on Saturday, and following the game, he did question some of the decisions, which included only allowing 3 minutes of stoppage time, and a decision to book in, and Dewsbury Hall having to take a free kick before the referee allowed them to. Just a quick quote, Joe, from one of your pieces. Moyes said, "I think 3 minutes stoppage time was very strange, and we've been playing a couple of teams who've taken quick free kicks in the games, and they've caught us out. But today, every quick free kick had to be stopped and brought back for the whistle, and then we got a booking for it. I find it quite unbelievable. They're talking about trying to keep the game quick." First off, did you have any problem whatsoever with Darren England's, or how Darren England refereed the game on Saturday?
Yes, to a certain extent. I think 2 things I'm going to set out from the start. 1, I don't think that Darren England cost Everton that game. And 2, David Moyes doesn't think that either, and that was also very clear. Obviously, spoke at him at greater length than just that quote. Everton lost that game with the way they played in the first 30 minutes, and we'll come on to that. Some of that might be down to Moyes. So, but yeah, I mean, obviously refereeing decisions were frustrating. The booking for the yellow card was mad. There should have been more than 3 minutes added on time. I don't know how Connor Bradley escaped the yellow card. I think it was at 4 of 6 or 7 fouls on Jack Grealish, and Jack Grealish was fouled more times than the amount of free kicks were given in his favour. So I have some sympathy with some of those criticisms, but I do think that they're all a bit of a distraction, really, from probably some of the wider talking points about why Everton lost on Saturday, and some of the issues that perhaps need to be addressed in the games going forward, and also some of the positives that we can take from that, as disappointing as it was to see Everton start so poorly and still ultimately not come away with anything from a game where I think that this group of players can get something at Anfield in the right circumstances. Some of that right circumstances includes decisions going their way, but I don't think that this was like, say, Anfield last season, when the goal that won it was questionable. That was a controversial decision as to how you interpreted the offside law. And then the one before that, when Ibrahim Konate should have got a second yellow card at 0-0 for hauling down Beto. I didn't think it was as bad as either of those. So frustrated rather than angry over the referee.
Chris, I kind of half agree with Joe to an extent that the referee didn't necessarily impact the game as from a result point of view, although I do think he was poor. I do think, however, we obviously, when we do these podcasts and as fans in general, we do try to micro-analyse things. And I do think there was a foul in the lead up to Liverpool's goal on Jack Grealish when we were kind of on the attack. And, the foul wasn't given. Liverpool go up the other end of the pitch a couple of minutes later, or a minute or so later. I think that's how quick it was. They end up scoring a goal, which, should have been dealt with by Everton defence. I don't think anyone can disagree with that. Do you have any grievances with the referee from Saturday?
It's probably similar to Joe in terms of there are grievances, but they're not grievances which have probably cost Everton the game. Everton should have been better in those moments. I think there was also one in built to the first goal where Mendy felt he was fouled, but he got played to the whistle, haven't you? You got to deal with those situations when they come your way. Yeah, they're odd, aren't they, in isolation? The small amount of added time which was played, considering what went on. Would Everton have equalised? It's not like they're exactly knocking on the door, were they, from an Everton point of view? They'd done much better in the second half, but Liverpool weren't exactly under the cosh at that moment. But yeah, it was just strange that happened. And again, with Kiernan Dewsbury Hall and taking the free kick early, you just wonder, don't you, if say you flip that around. Like I said, I don't think it cost Everton the game, but if Liverpool had been losing and only 3 minutes of stoppage time was played, I wonder what the reaction would have been. And also ditto if a Liverpool player had been booked for taking the free kick early. I just wondered what kind of outcry you might have had then. But no, I don't think they cost Everton the game, and that's a disappointing thing from Everton's point of view, that they should have been better, certainly should have started better, because it was too little too late in the end.
I don't want to dwell on it too much, Joe, because I do want to come on to the negative aspects and the positive aspects of the performance, so we kind of move on to Wolves. I just think sometimes, and I'm not just focusing on Darren England, I just think sometimes refs don't help themselves. I think the decision to award Kiernan Dewsbury Hall a yellow card for this free kick incident, it was just unnecessary. And then that's when rival fans, or doesn't matter, you could be a neutral fan and go back to an incident like you just said there. Cooper should have been booked probably at least once for 4, 5, 6 fouls that he did. So I just think it's common sense from the referee's point of view. If he said it once and he's done it, and then he's done it again as it took the free kick before the referees allowed him to, maybe just say, listen, if you do this again, I am going to book you next time because I've warned you. But it's the same with the free kicks. And from a Liverpool point of view as well, consistent fouling and nothing. Everton got no protection from my point of view.
They probably had very little protection. And actually, as I say, for all the furore around some of the other things, look, the Dewsbury Hall yellow card was maddening, and that's an incident in isolation that I don't really think made much of a difference. I think Conor Bradley goes in the book for one of the fouls, or for the accumulation of fouls against Jack Grealish. Maybe that has a bigger impact on the game, because then he's on a yellow card whilst he's being torn to pieces by Jack Grealish. And when you have a player of Grealish's ability and also his intelligence, you would imagine that he would then carry on playing on that. And it makes it even harder for Bradley to try and get out and deal with the Grealish threat as a result of that. But maybe this is going to be an unpopular opinion, but I actually think that if you were looking at referee performances which hindered Everton in their search for more points this season, I actually think that the referee in the Aston Villa game was more to Everton's detriment than the one at Liverpool the other day. Because, as I say, I'm not saying that there aren't legitimate grievances with the way Everton were treated at Anfield, but I don't think that they were the difference between Everton getting something from that game and not. I do feel like the general tenor, I can't remember who was the referee against us. Simon Hooper. Just his constant assertiveness on the whistle. Everton aside, like they were trying to do with that Kiernan Dewsbury Hall quick free kick, trying to play on the front foot, trying to keep the game moving, trying to be proactive and positive, just held them back. It's quite unusual, because obviously, we're not used to seeing an Everton side that's like that these days, because it's been missing that attacking creativity and guile for so many years. But it is frustrating that when you've got a side that want to play and you've got players that can play on the front foot, they're just constantly being hauled back.
So I can just say, going on from what Joe said there, because it was interesting, because I think there's a perception, there was a perception in many Liverpool fans' minds about how Everton were going to play, how Everton were going to approach a derby based on historical events, based on Everton in recent years. And the reality was actually quite different. Like, as you said, it was all get the ball to Jack Grealish, and here's this ball player who's going to try and take people on, and like I say, giving Conor Bradley, testing him all afternoon. And I overheard one of the stewards, he was very helpful with us and find our places in the press box, but he had this idea in his head, obviously we had Sean Dyche in recent seasons, Everton been relegation battles, he was talking about set pieces and throw-ins, and he was fearing that from Everton. He obviously thought, Everton got the big lads, this is what it's going to be like. And the reality is that Everton are quite different than that now because of the summer signings that they made, the more attacking impetus that Moyes has implemented into the side. Players like Grealish, who was a constant threat, or Dewsbury Hall, who was less so, I thought, on Saturday, Ilman as well. They're not this rough and tumble. I mean, great if they can make that play. I think Moyes wants nothing more than to have the set pieces being played to Everton's advantage again. It is something they should make more of. But Everton aren't that team. And I think that probably a lot of opponents might think this, but certainly a lot of Liverpool fans thought, oh, Everton are going to come, dogs of war, 21st century, whatever, and try and replicate that sort of style of play. And it's not like that. Everton could have actually caused Liverpool more problems through their ball players, particularly Grealish and Ndiaye in those wide areas. And it wasn't so much as, let's come and rough up Liverpool. And that, I think a lot of their supporters were expecting that, but it didn't really materialise in that. And I think that's frustrating for Everton, that their silkier players like Grealish probably weren't given that opportunity more.
Just to finish off, I mean, I'm going to be accused of clutching at straws here, probably from opposition fans, but I did think it was a bit of a, bizarre performance from Darren England. A few bizarre positions, the 3 minutes, where whether Everton would have scored within those extra minutes that we're claiming that there should have been, I don't know, but the amount of subs was more than that occurred throughout the game, or the second half was more than 3 minutes. And, one observation, and I'm not saying he did this intentionally, by the way, let's make that clear, but I felt like Darren England was just too involved in the play at a lot of opportunities when Everton were trying to progress forward and pass the ball. I don't know if that was something that you guys picked up on, but I just felt certainly in the second half, he just seemed to be in the way a lot of the time when Everton were...
Yeah, I think Liverpool would say the same. I mean, the one time he actually stopped the ball was when they were attacking and they were in the final third and it hit him and he had to go back.
That's a criticism of the ref in general. I'm not saying in any way, shape or form saying he was trying to influence the game whatsoever. Just frustrating all round, Joe. Nevertheless, though, despite all of that, it was a tame and slow start from Everton at the end of the day. 2-0 down in the first 30 minutes. Everton giving themselves a bigger mountain to climb. I guess from everyone, that's where the real frustration will lie.
Yeah, it has to be. It has to be, I think, because this was a game that Everton had an opportunity. I know, we know obviously Liverpool are the champions, and we know that they spent huge sums in over the course of the summer, and obviously they've been in a position where they've been able to fund that, and it's all legitimate and fair play to them for it. But you can't deny that a huge amount of investment has been made in that squad, and what Everton have been able to do, even with their starting point being so far off, it still pales in significance the amount of funds that have gone in there, and obviously that is going to tell in games like this. But you just thought that with 3 games in a week, and with the emotional and the physical stress of having been pushed so hard in every game, but including those 2 prior games, obviously needed stoppage time goals against Burnley and Atletico Madrid. You just thought there was an opportunity there for Everton to get them, especially bearing in mind the way that recent derbies have gone, because Everton have really done well to kind of level the playing field against them on the pitch. There's been this slightly strange, almost contradictory dynamic over the last few years, where the gulf in fortunes between Everton and Liverpool has never been wider. Yet when you get those 2 sides on the pitch, Everton seems to be one of very few teams that can really get under the skin and make things uncomfortable for Liverpool. And we saw that in the way that they beat them at Goodison. Then we saw that in the derby at Goodison in the 2-2 draw. And as I say, already alluded to the Canati decision and the last derby at Anfield as well. Even at Anfield, that they've done a really good job at making it quite an even game when it shouldn't be that case. And you just thought that if Everton could start that way on Saturday, that there might be something for them if they could turn that game into a fight. And maybe that's perhaps where maybe Moyes or maybe the players in general. I mean, Moyes was very clear after the game that he did not want his players to play in the way that they did in the first 30 minutes. So maybe it was the occasion. I don't know. Maybe it was almost a heightened sense of belief because they think because they can play much better football these days. But they almost seem to forget some of the fundamentals of going to Anfield. Like sometimes you have to go there and integral to getting a result at Anfield for any side. You could be Man City or PSG or Real Madrid, is getting through that first 20 minutes without conceding, making it difficult for them, making them realise that they're in a fight. And Everton didn't do that, didn't get anywhere near them. The goal only came after 9 minutes, and it was a brilliant finish. It was their first shot on target, and it was a finish that if you ask him to do that 100, as good a player as Gravenberch is, if you have to ask him to do that 100 times, I don't know how many times he gets that just right so it goes in. But the goal did feel like it was coming in those early stages, and it was so frustrating just watching Everton. And this will probably be a point we make after we discuss the finer points of the game. But it just, for me, you just got that sense of Everton at the moment, and this isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think it's probably just the growing pains as to where they are. There's an element about Everton at the minute where you can't quite work out what Everton are right now, because they have this. They almost have this dual ideology. They've come out of that dogs of war phase where they've been for the last few years, and now they've got that flourish and that talent, and those players like Grealish and Dewsbury Hall who are wonderful on the ball. And it's trying to marry those two up into an effective way of playing. And I think that whilst the competing ideologies jar, the players are good enough and the manager's good enough for you to be able to still be effective against maybe your mid-table and low half the table sides. But the minute you come up against the side, the quality of Liverpool, you're going to get exposed. And that's what happened in that first half an hour. I don't think the players quite realised what they were trying to do. And you have this situation, we've got Idrissa Gueye, who's playing quite advanced, playing quite far forward. But then you've got a back four where, without Jarrad Branthwaite, it sits deeper because it hasn't got that recovery pace. So all of a sudden you have these chasms of space that open up. And you've got Dewsbury Hall pushing forward. So again, there's more space for people like Milos Kerkez to come from full-back and move into the middle. And that's how both goals came.
So you think, I'm not saying you're saying this, but from what I'm gathering, what you're saying is you think Moyes maybe himself was caught in two minds of how to approach the game and in terms of what we should do.
I don't know if it was Moyes or I don't know if it was the players, but whatever their intention was, it obviously didn't work. And I think that for me, and the first half an hour is just indicative of this general. I think for me that was the first game that. I think that was the first game that I thought Everton really missed Abdoulaye Doucouré. And
Kieran Dewsbury Hall was quiet, I thought. So yeah,
because I think that you have to accept that in games against teams like that, Everton aren't going to match them player for player. They're not going to match them quality for quality. What you have to do is match them with physicality and energy. And when you look at things like the 2-2 derby game at Goodison last year, it was Beto and it was Doucouré, and they absolutely hassled and harried Van Dijk and Konate and the centre midfielders, and they just couldn't get away from them. They got under their skin. Like, he had that bite and he had that energy. We saw the way he celebrated in front of the Liverpool fans. This isn't me saying that Abdoulaye Doucouré is a better player than Keenan Dewsbury Hall or even Carlos Alcaraz. This isn't me saying that it was wrong for Everton to move away from Doucouré this season, but I think in those games where you have to, it's not the intellect or the creativity or the genuine football ability in the Everton side that's going to draw them closer to a side like Liverpool. It is that fight and that bite. And someone like an Abdoulaye Doucouré was very good against those better. So he scored against Man United last season. The first game that Dyche brought him back was that game against Arsenal where they won 1-0. In those bigger games, he was quite good at levelling the playing field because he just got in their faces so much, and sometimes that is what you need. The other thing that I also thought was it was the first game, and obviously Everton have missed him this season, but it was the first game where Everton have really missed Jarrad Branthwaite. Michael Keane has been the best defender that Everton have had this season across the performances, and he's done really well. But he's a different type of player to Michael Keane, and the dynamic of the relationship with Tarkowski is different when Branthwaite's on the pitch. And when you think that Everton have had so many good performances against Liverpool, albeit not only won one of them in recent years, Branthwaite's been so much more crucial. He's been crucial to all of those games. And it's his additional aggressiveness and also his recovery pace just allows the defence to push up a little bit further, so there isn't that big gap between the midfield, and it allows him to be a bit more combative and come out and fight in some of those fires that develop further on the pitch. And if you look at both goals, not necessarily saying that Branthwaite would have stopped them, but they both come from that kind of Everton's left-hand side where Liverpool exploit a bit of space and a bit of uncertainty and a bit of freedom that they're just given in front of the defence on that left-hand side. And I think if you had Jarrad Branthwaite in there, I don't think they get that, because I think he gets out to deal with it. And if he doesn't deal with it, he gets back to recover a bit better because he's got more pace. End of lecture.
No,
turns to look at the screen and
see the comments.
And
just so people know, we mentioned this last week that we can now see the comments from the live stream on the screen. Yeah. So if I miss out any comments, then the lads can read them. So if you agree or disagree with Joe,
and I can see comments there saying I miss watching Doucouré miscontrol the ball in the middle of the park and he couldn't pass the ball. That isn't the point that I'm trying to make.
Liam EFC, that one.
Yeah, the point I'm trying to make here is that for Everton to go to Anfield and get a result, sometimes it's not just about that, because if you're going to go pound for pound and watch them play football for football, then that's where you're going to come unstuck. Sometimes you need those players that are going to level up, and Doucouré was very good at doing that for Everton against some of the sides that are facing, compete for Champions League football. So that isn't me saying he's a better player. That isn't me saying that I don't think Everton were right to move on from him this summer. It's me saying that I'm not happy with how Everton's set up these days. But I think in specific games, like against that, you can see in that first 30 minutes where Everton suffer a result from losing that kind of physical edge that they perhaps had in that position. So yeah, that's the point I'm trying to make.
No, fair enough. I think, just a side note here, compliment there for you, Bees.
I'll take that when they come.
Everton County Road Bobblers. Bees always looking very smart, but you always look smart though, to be fair. So,
the Wolf of Old Hall Street.
Yeah, I had that said to me the other week.
Listen, I don't think there's any denying that Liverpool's midfield absolutely dominated Everton's midfield, certainly in the first 30 minutes. I actually felt we improved with the late stages of the first half.
Everton massively improved in this game.
We did.
The first half hour was the problem.
Just to go back to your point, I think Everton have got a number of gems that we've brought in recently, and they're the obvious ones. And Kane and Dewsbury's definitely one of them, Grealish, and we know we've got one or two on the bench that we could bring on as well. I just think Moyes is still trying to find a place for some of them and trying to mesh them all together. And it's going to come. We keep saying that it's great that we've got options, but we want these players playing in the right positions as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think that's a big issue. I think we can look back. My hope is Everton can look back at this game at Anfield and see some of the problems that's exposed, and hopefully this is a turning point where they start to deal with them, so they can kind of fine tune some of the problems that they've had and being able to get away with so far in this season. The other thing is, it's great for Everton to have options, but you also have to use them, and I thought that Alcaraz and Diblin came on far too late in this game.
Yeah, we'll definitely come on to that. A lot of people messaging me before the podcast saying we need to bring this up, which we will. I mean, Chris, just coming onto you there. Everton's, other than the Leeds game, I guess, every single game which we've started this season, we've been relatively quick out the blocks, you would argue to say. So what was your thoughts on the slow start? Were we just caught cold? Was it the tactics approach? Was it Liverpool just better quality? All of the above? I don't know. It's
interesting, actually. We got the comments coming in thick and fast. I've been trying to... And actually, he's further along now, but I took note of it. Tazul Islam, who's been a regular contributor for us, he said a lot of contributions today as well. But he said he put it rather succinctly. He said we bottled it. He said the players and manager, the occasion got to them in that respect, and it's something. Talking to Michael Ball earlier for his column, and like Joe, he agreed with a lot of those points from a tactical point of view, and in terms of, I think it's a very astute point about Jared Branthwaite and the way those huge gaps between the defence and midfield. But we went into this game, we all know, and we've said already, we've recognised, Liverpool are the strongest team in the country. They're reigning champions, and they strengthened with that record-breaking spend for a Premier League club in a single transfer window this summer. Yeah, it's a tough ask, but just one from a mental point of view, just disappointing from an Everton point of view, the way they started, because as they showed in the final hour, they were much better, but then it was too late, and I just wonder it's the $1 million question, isn't it, for Everton, in terms of the psychology of going to Anfield, with the fact that they haven't won there in front of fans for 26 years now, and it's different players, it's different managers. I know David Moyes would be disappointed, because along with Arsenal, Chelsea, Man United away, some of those other big monkeys on his back that he wants to obviously try and rectify in this second spell, get wins there. He's never won with Anfield, in his case, either with Everton or any of the other teams who he's managed. So you just wonder, for whatever reason, what the heads weren't right. I don't know why. I don't know what you need to do about that.
We said on Friday's pod, I think you were in it, the psychological aspect is maybe even more of an issue than the actual quality side of things, because we've seen lesser teams than Everton over the past couple of years. Not many, by the way, but certainly over the past couple of years, still go to Anfield and pick up decent results. Everton haven't done that for a number of years. Obviously, with fans not in the stadium, but since 1999 with fans in the stadium. So there has to be, we've got to get over this psychological block.
Yeah.
There has to be, certainly at Anfield. And we've mentioned it before, Everton's record at Goodison, obviously now it's going to be Hill Dickinson at home, has been, decent. It's been relatively good. Liverpool haven't really won loads. It's either always been a draw. I know Liverpool have picked up 1 or 2, but Everton, they've been hugely competitive. But Anfield, it's just ridiculous how we've got this mental block.
I'd actually argue that the mental block exists in the derby full stop. Like you said, they have been a lot more competitive at Goodison as it was, obviously, before this season. But you got to remember when they won under Deitch, that was the first time in, what was it? Was it 12 or not? 13 and a half?
Yeah, it was a long time.
Yes, so okay, they'd held Liverpool to a lot of draws and stuff like that compared to Anfield. They still went out for 13 years without winning a home derby. So, yeah, they just don't know whether it's an issue against Liverpool full stop, and which is obviously becomes more acute when you're at Anfield and it's much tougher. So, I mean, it's been and gone now, but it is something for them to look at. And how are you going to do that? And so when they go to these other games, obviously Manchester United away is one that's up on the horizon now, and Chelsea and Arsenal later in the season, these ones that, David Moyes is going to be determined to rectify those, because they're hugely successful, relatively, Everton manager, but these are some sort of blots on his copybook, as it were, these record against, as it was in the noughties when he was there first time round, the big four, as it were, but yeah, those records still exist. So it's a totally different set of players, and then he's a hugely experienced manager now. So I'm sure he'll be hurting as much as anyone in that respect. And I think he alluded to, didn't he, in his post-match press conference about the referees, but he also admitted that they weren't the racists in that first half an hour.
We will get to the substitutes and Moyes' decision making. I know a lot of people are keen for us to do that. I'm keen, and I know Joe certainly is, but just some comments that I've made note of as we've gone on. So KD750 says, opportunity missed. We paid them too much respect in the first half and should have perhaps taken advantage of their midweek game like we played in the second half on the front foot. Daniel Barton, if you sit back and just let Liverpool play with no pressing or pressure, then you're going to get beat. We were 2-0 down before we realised it. To be honest, I think that's a good shout. It was so quick, or it felt so quick that we were 2-0 down. It was like the game's already kind of done and dusted, really. Eltel on the banks of the Royal Blue, Mersey. You can't go to Liverpool and give them a 2-goal lead. Both goals could and should have been prevented. A quick yellow for a quick free kick. Poor Bradley, 4 fouls, no yellow. So back to the referee in there. I mean, Joe, let's try to move on to a few positives, I guess. Hang on. First off, let's talk about where Beto finds himself at this current moment in time, because obviously he hasn't been great in the past 2. He probably wasn't fantastic against Villa, although I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt, but quite clearly he wasn't great against Liverpool. Although, I guess I'm going to defend him again. What chances did he get? However, it did improve a little bit once he went off. Would you put that down to Barry, or would you put that down to the players around the striker as well?
I think there's a change in mentality at half-time, and I think that helped. I think Liverpool also were probably more content for Everton to have the ball, perhaps thinking that this was the Everton of last few seasons, which was afraid of the ball, when actually this Everton side isn't. So maybe a bit of complacency and maybe a bit of tiredness from Liverpool. I don't think Everton were better with Barry on the pitch, but I don't think he was substantially better than Beto. He didn't have a shot on target. After the goal, Everton didn't have a shot on target. They had the momentum, they had the ascendancy. Anfield was nervous. Anyone that tries to tell I've had lots of people from a red persuasion try and tell me that they weren't anxious. They were anxious. And you could tell they were anxious because you got, Dominic Szoboszlai and everyone else trying to hold the ball in the corner and time wasting the last few minutes of the game. They were nervous, but Everton also didn't create any, not even any real half chances either. I think the improvement in the second half probably started in the final 10 minutes of the first half when Everton had a few chances. Obviously, at 1-0 they had the chance that, when Grealish dummied, Gravenberch and played Dewsbury Hall, and that was a difficult chance to take. They had a little bit more possession and a little bit more kind of sustained possession, I think, in the final 10 minutes first half. Won a few corners, and yeah, the best chance was Idrissa Gueye's, and I thought that was a really, really good chance.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't think enough is being made of how poor that finish was. And obviously he rights the wrong to some extent with his finish 20 minutes or so later, but that was a good move. And yeah, there was a ball there to a Premier League player, that fell to a Premier League player's feet in a central area inside the Premier League, inside the opposition's penalty box. And he had time and he had space, and obviously he absolutely fluffed his effort, didn't he? That was a big chance, and can't say that if Everton had got that goal, it would have changed the game going into the half time, and then it would have made a different game in the second half. Because I actually think that happened anyway, but obviously it would have been much easier for Everton if the fight back had started, 20 minutes earlier than it did. So yeah, they did improve, and I think we'll get into maybe the mechanics of that, but I do think that's one of the positives to take it. 2-0 down, half an hour in. And with some of the officiating kind of, by that point, I think Grealish had already been fouled a few times. They hadn't been given. You think this could be one of those derby horror shows that really, really kind of set you back in the season. For it to have not been that case, for Everton to fall back in the way that they did, I do think offers some genuine positivity to come from that game. There are things you can be optimistic about, and there are lessons they can learn to get better. One of them is the fact that they didn't go under, because it would have been so easy to have just gone under in those circumstances, and they didn't do that.
Yeah, that's a good shout, because I was having a couple of Twitter debates following on from the game on Sunday, and it did think they crossed my mind. 2-0 down, easily you could end this game 4-5-0.
You just felt like that. You felt like they sensed blood a little bit, and I think Everton were too passive and they made it too easy for them. See the Blues in there defending me with me, the Corey things. I think just trying to say about, which I appreciate, just trying to say about they didn't have that passiveness because they were a different side last year, and sometimes that a bit of extra bite helps you. But look, Everton did well and caused Liverpool problems in the second half by playing good football, and that has to be how Everton tried to move up the table. That has to be the blueprint for what we see for the rest of the season. I think probably maybe including against the bigger sides, they have to be a little bit more confident. The first 30 minutes, the problem was almost that there wasn't a plan. It's not that Everton were too attacking or too defensive. It was just that there seemed to be too many competing ideas within that team. Playing long balls over the top of the bat who couldn't do anything with, but then also go over the heads of your three best players on the pitch, technically best players on the pitch. A defence that likes to defend the box, but Idrissa Gueye pushing up and then perhaps not playing. I know he's not necessarily a 6, but he's been better in that more defensive role for Everton. It looks like he was given more freedom on Saturday, but as a result of it, got caught out of position a little bit, or if not caught out of position, him stepping forward and the defence not matching it just led to those gaps that Liverpool exploited. That was the problem.
Chris, just interested to hear your thoughts on Beto, who's always a hot topic, obviously, on the pod. Look, I think it's fine to be constructively critical of a player when they don't play well, and Beto falls into that category in this instance. But I do think it's important to remember that he is more than likely going to play again. He's going to be given another chance by Moyes again, which means we need to effectively stick with him for now. I think we can't just be like, well, bin him off and that's the end of it, because it's not realistic.
Don't even do that with any player at Everton.
No, exactly. But I do think regardless of the result on Saturday and how well or bad Beto played, my prediction would be that Moyes would have given Barry an opportunity against Wolves. So regardless of whether Beto is out of the team on Tuesday, I don't think it's down to, in my opinion, because he played bad. I think Barry would have been just given that opportunity anyway. Like I say, he's probably going to be given more chances unless Barry just, takes his chance on Tuesday and runs with it. Fantastic if he does. Beto would be, a great option to have off the bench, I guess. You could look at it that way. But considering Beto's going to be given another chance, how do we get the best out of him? Let's face it, he scored lots of goals last season towards the back end. We need him to do that again.
Playing to his strengths, I thought he was actually unfortunate on Saturday. I know he caused those same Liverpool defenders a lot of problems early in this calendar year. It was actually pointed out to us that EFC Stato, just the first time since 1991 you had the three league derbies in the same calendar year, and to be fair, Beto had done very well. Obviously he'd scored at Goodison, And then he really probably should have scored at Anfield when he had that big chance at the post last season. So we know he could actually cause a lot of headaches for Van Dijk and Konate. We didn't see that on Saturday, unfortunately. But I think a lot of that was, he was feeding on scraps. And you say, how are Everton going to get the best out of him? You've got to play to his strengths and get the ball to him. And it just wasn't enough of that. Like I said, I thought Kane and Dewsbury Hall is a really astute signing for Everton, and I think he's going to do well. He's already got his goal at Wolves, and spoke to him. To be fair, he came out after the game and he said, he's not going to say it publicly, but he is going to set himself targets in terms of he doesn't just want to get 1 or 2 goals. He wants to be getting the goals and assists, playing in that area of the pitch, and that's what you need from someone who's operating as that number 10. But yeah, there's nobody in and around Beto, and as Joe said, Tierno Barry had a bit of a go second half, put himself about, but again, what do you say? Not a shot on target. I don't think. Do
you think he was a little bit better holding the ball up?
He probably was, but I don't think there's. The problem is at the moment, neither of them is kind of it's chopping and changing because neither of them is being that convincing. It's not like you've got 2 strikers who are both on fire, and it's like, who do you leave out? It's like, who might do something, and obviously we kind of predicted this a few weeks ago. Obviously, Beto came on against Mansfield, scored, and he got his goal at Wolves. So, but yeah, he's going to start against Villa, and given his pass record against Liverpool, he'll start at Anfield, and it's been proven like that. But we also said at the time, then what we were saying this fortnight ago, then Wolves would be the opportunity for Barry, and I'd probably imagine it'll go that way. But as you said, if it's up to Barry now, show because the problem is it is 50-50 almost at the moment, in that neither of them is staking a claim to be the main man. They're both kind of doing bits and pieces here and there, and it's not quite convincing enough. But I think both of them need help from those around them, because it can be, even like it was under Dyche, sometimes it can be quite a thankless task leading the line for Everton.
Did you get any impression whatsoever, certainly when Beto was on the pitch, that the creative players were a little bit reluctant to maybe pass to Beto? Maybe they were cutting it back to another player, maybe when they could have got the ball across the face of the goal for Beto. Certainly with the chance that Gay had, I think that was cut back to Gay, and
yeah.
I think it was, you could argue it was the right decision, but was Beto in a better place? I can't remember off the top of my head, but I have to watch it back. But there was a couple of instances where I thought you are actually reluctant to pass the ball to Beto a little bit there.
I don't know if it's that, but but they certainly weren't playing through strength. I mean, look at the Liverpool's second goal, the way it's a perfectly timed through ball, and then obviously it's a clinical finish. But I think those are the sort of chances that Beto be crying out for. It's not necessarily, and I mean, he is good in the air and he can get on the end of the crosses, but as we saw last season, whether it was James Garner, whether it was James Tarkowski, he's slipping onto those through balls, the sort of exactly kind of balls that Liverpool scored their second goal, and he wasn't getting that from the Everton play. So I don't know. No, it's like schoolyard stuff where we're not passing to Beto with it, it's just going to bounce off him, whatever. I don't think it's kind of. I mean, as we said on the pod, he gave a really frank, a really candid interview with us ahead of the derby, not just speaking about the emotional side of things with Diogo Jota, but talking about his relationship with David Moyes, how he's learnt so much, but how Moyes is always on his case, as it were, in terms of, what
how many have you scored?
Yeah, he's going up to the other he's going up to the other staff, he's going up to the keepers after training saying, did Beto really score when he told me he did, and stuff like that. But he just wants the best from him, but he knows Beto's a very emotional character, heart on his sleeve himself. He does give him the arm around the shoulder as well, but yeah, I think Beto is under no illusions about what he needs to do in terms of scoring for this team. He knows that just sort of holding the ball up well or whatever, that's not enough. He's taking on the number 9 jersey and he wants to be the main man. Whether that happens or not, only time will tell us. I think the problem is that certainly for him on Saturday, it wasn't the kind of Beto we'd seen in the past against Liverpool, and I think to be in his defence, those around him weren't doing enough to help him.
Just 2 comments on this particular topic. So the Blues have said Beto needs to play against slow centre-backs so he can put passes in behind. He struggles when they can match his pace. And I've lost the comment there. Where's it gone? It was a really decent comment. I can't remember off the top of my head. Basically, so I think it was Paul Williams basically saying we've changed our style of play, which is not helping Beto or Barry to their particular strengths.
Yeah, no,
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so, because obviously we've come from almost a possession light type of side that, because you're sitting deeper, you can, the opposition attack, the opposition defence is much further up the pitch. You can try play balls in behind them, which is where Better kind of thrives. Well, now Everton they have that little trio of Dewsbury Hall and Dye and Greaves that want the ball in and around the edge of the area. And let's be honest, Beto isn't the type of player that's going to link up with them and play little interchanges and deft little touches. That's just not quite him. I think Beto and Barry will be fine this season. I think they'll score enough goals for Everton to get to where they want to be this season, because I think they'll have enough chances created for them. I think Beto should have scored against Aston Villa. It's easy to forget he has already scored 2 this season, and the 2 goals they're both laid on a plate for him. But when you look at the creative force that Everton have got behind whoever plays up front, they will get lots of chances this season. And either either Beto, Barry, or a combination.
Maybe that's what they need.
or a combination of both will score goals. What they just won't do is, Barry perhaps not, because he's still earlier in his development cycle, and Beto because he's perhaps not that level of quality. None of them are going to score that kind of 16, 17, 18 goals that everyone wants, is crying out for. But should we really expect them to? I'm not sure we should, because look how much they cost and look at where they come from. I keep seeing all these people saying that Everton should have gone for Premier League proven strikers, but I don't know where you get that, because when you look at, and this is another area where a team like Liverpool expose this, because look at Liverpool, they've got 69 million Ekitike and 125 million on Alexander Isak. You look at Chelsea, they beat Everton to Liam Delap for 30 million. They're then going to spend 60 on João Pedro. You look at Newcastle, it's about 80 odd million I think they've committed to on Voltemada, another 55 or so on Johan Visser. You look at Arsenal and spent 60 odd million on Gokares. You look at Manchester United, obviously they're lowly Manchester United. It's about 60 million pound plus each on Mbuemo, Sesko, and Cunha. Those are the fees that people are paying for what they think are a proven article. And some of those aren't proven articles in the Premier League. That's what those Champions League sides are paying to try and find those strikers that can get them those goals. Tierno Barry feels like an expensive signing for Everton at £27.5 million because of how little Everton have spent over recent years. But he's a big fee in an Everton-only context. And that's what people have to remember here. Everton kind of need to go through some of these growing pains to eventually become the side that can then maybe spend 50, 60 million pound on that striker that you can be more confident will get those goals, will make a difference in these games against those better sides. For Everton to do that in a sustainable way, in which, with the profit and sustainability and the squad cost ratios and things like that obviously prevents someone from just going out and splashing huge sums just willy-nilly. Everton have to kind of play the long game here, and some of that is persevering with players that perhaps have a little bit less quality, and accepting they're the players that are going to take you from a relegation battle to mid-table, and then you go for that next stage once you sustain there. It's like with Barry, you've got to bring in the raw article so that you can either develop him into that player that is going to get those 20 goals a season, or develop him into a player that's going to attract someone that's going to pay enough money for him to fund the next player that you move along the succession line. Everton will make big leaps forward this season, and I think there's a bigger leap forward than perhaps is expected available to Everton because of some of the players that they've got in, the likes of Grealish and their quality, and because of the drop-off that I think we're seeing from some of the teams that were above Everton last season. That also presents an opportunity. Brighton don't look quite as together as they have been recently. Brentford lost again at the weekend and will really struggle. You've got to remember they finished above Everton last season. Crystal Palace, once they start getting into European football, it's going to be tough for them. They've lost Eze. Nottingham Forest just looks like they could implode at any moment. Aston Villa, I don't think I've seen a side drop off as badly as I think that Villa side has compared to where they were 6 months ago and where they are now. There is an opportunity for Everton there to kind of almost not run before they can walk, but perhaps take 3 steps where you thought they might only be able to take 1 or 1.5 this season. But we've got to remember that for Everton to long-term start to push for those European places and actually compete with maybe the sides of your Newcastles and get in and amongst them before you can then launch an assault on maybe teams higher up the table, it's going to have to be incremental. And part of that is the growing pains of having like someone like a Barry or a Beto up front. They are going to cause us stress this season. They are going to miss chances. It is going to be frustrating. But I have no problem in believing that they will get enough goals for Everton. I think Moyes has alluded to this a couple of times already at the summer. Everton can't go and spend 70-80 million pounds on one player. So what he's had to try and do is create that supporting cast of players that can perhaps chip in with the 5 or 6 or the 7 goals. And we're already starting to see that with your Grealish, your Dewsbury Halls, your Ndiaye, hopefully your Diblins, hopefully your Alcarazes. That's where Everton have improved, because that's where you can make the difference. And I think Everton have done their best to do that. The one thing that I fear with Beto and Barry this season is I think that Beto is clearly a confidence player and Barry is clearly a young player, and they're both going to require patience and a run of games. And I think there's a danger. Whilst I think tomorrow is a good opportunity to start Barry, I think he deserves that chance after the second half against Liverpool and after the struggle across a game and a half that Beto's had against Villa and Liverpool. There's a danger in chopping and changing all the time, because then all that happens is neither of them get to build that momentum that they need to then go on a run of scoring goals. We saw Beto can do that last season. I'm sure Barry, he scored 11 goals for a side that qualified for the Champions League, qualified for Europe at least in La Liga last season. If you give them the chance, they'll get there. But if you change them every game and a half, then you're probably going to get in both their ways. And whilst it's easy to get drawn into that, you've got to be careful not to. I'm
going to shock you. I agree with pretty much everything you said, certainly about the striker situation and the money that we've spent on Barry. Certainly me and Tony Scott have had hefty debates with regards to the money we've spent on Barry, and it is big. And I know Tony's saying, well, we need to go out and buy that striker. Well, I don't know where he thinks we're going to find the striker. Fantastic comment here from Danny Church. Says, we weren't in a position to get strikers from Marks and Spencers. We had to settle for Asda, but we will get bigger, better players soon with the building process.
Yeah, that's it. It's a process, and people need to remember that. And I think that's just a problem. The strikers isn't an area of fine margins. Let's say just look at what Liverpool and others have been able to spend on strikers in comparison to Everton. But it's one area, and when you add it up with a couple of the other areas, like the right back and the left back situation, centre midfield situation, the Brownthwaite being out injured, that they just add up together, and Everton can kind of overcome that, as we've already seen against Villa in the state they are, because they should have won that game. They deserved to win that game. Against your Wolves, against a Brighton who missed a chance, so they did. Everton can do that. It's going to be hard to take sometimes. That when you come up against someone like a Liverpool, and you look at how much money they've spent on top of what they already had, that's where it gets exposed. And you know what? Like, might not like it, might not be palatable, but that is okay. It's like, it is okay for that Everton side to go there and get outplayed by, well, only for half an hour, get outplayed by a Liverpool side that won the league and then spent 125 million on Isaac and 70 million on Ekitike and 160 million pound on Wirtz, and however much they spent on Frimpong and Kirkes out wide. They're just so much further ahead in that cycle than where Everton are. But if Everton want to get to a position where they can start being more competitive against those sides more consistently, it's a gradual process. Because if you run before you walk, well, that's what Mashiri tried to do. And
James Graham's just saying that, isn't he? Very astutely, what Joe's just finished on there. We've seen what happens when you try to do it all with Mashiri. So I'm happy to be patient and develop his team.
Yeah.
We'll be back in Waitrose soon enough. We will. Chris, one of the biggest frustrations, and this was the biggest frustration for me, to be honest, was when we went 2-1, that we didn't really capitalise on that. We seemed to lose momentum even after scoring, which usually the scoring team, it's the complete opposite. You should be able to go into the ascendancy, you get the momentum back, you build on that goal. You're still 2-1 down. There's nothing really to lose. You should throw everything at Liverpool from that point of view, and this can come on to the substitutions as well if you want to make a comment on that.
Yeah,
but for me, I just found that really frustrating, and I don't know whether that was because, again, you can go back to Liverpool and their quality, and they were able to somehow kill the game to an extent. I agree with Joe, there was certainly nerves in Anfield, you could tell from the fans, and even on the touchline with Arne Slot. But you're 2-0 down, you score, you think, go at them here, and I just felt like we just didn't do that, certainly towards maybe the last couple of minutes of the game. It was getting a little bit nervy for them.
Yeah, there wasn't an Alamo, was there? It's not like they were throwing the kitchen sink at them. Like as you mentioned already, the substitutions didn't come until late in terms of mixing things up. In that respect, it was something we'd said after Villa as well, in terms of trying to add some fresh impotence, whereas a lot of these big teams and the teams with the greatest resources. And we mentioned it in last week. Mikel Arteta talking about, never mind his starters, his finishers, his people who he can bring off the bench for the last 20 minutes or whatever to finish the game. And yeah, there wasn't that. That's why we were saying about the time added on or not, as it were. You know, it probably really should have been more time added on, but would Everton have made the most of that? Because unfortunately, there wasn't that shift. Yes, there was nerves. There was definitely nerves in the stands and on the pitch to a certain extent, but it's not like they were not knocking on the door. And to be fair, like I said, I was speaking to Michael Ball earlier, so we've got his column coming up, and he felt that Liverpool were just sort of cruising in second gear, really. They were almost able to keep Everton at arm's length. It wasn't like they were about to capitulate at any moment. They were just getting on with it and not having to sort of overexert themselves at times. So that was frustrating that, yeah, like you say, once they'd halved the deficit, they still had over half an hour to go. And it's not like there was a couple of moments, weren't there? And I think they had a Beto when Gay had another chance actually, and Tierno Barry challenged the keeper, didn't he? And there was a free kick, and there was another opportunity.
That was quite clearly just the referee was going to blow for that.
That was disappointing that they weren't able to make more of a fist of it once they had improved so much on the disappointment of the first half.
I mean, the Blues here disagrees with me. He says, I thought we did have a go and made it a game, to be honest, but I completely disagree. When we went 2-1, we lost all momentum. We weren't bombarding Liverpool's goal how we should have been. You're 2-1 down. You've got nothing to lose. Just go for it. Just absolutely go for it. Yeah. Joe, I guess this brings us on to the subs then. Just some comments here from people that have made notes of comments. So Liam EFC, Moyes is making some poor decisions about who starts and the subs and other stuff. It's maddening. And Tazul Islam says he didn't change anything against Villa either. That frustrated me even more. Didn't even give Diblin, Alcaraz or McNeil any minutes. Can I just, before you go in, what I will say, to play devil's advocate, I felt like you can say I'm wrong here, but I felt like he was going to change it just before we scored and maybe change his mind and thought 2-1 here will give the players on the pitch that chance to make it 2-1. But I still felt 7-8 minutes for Diblin and Alcaraz. It's nothing, is it, to make that impact?
No, not in that arena as well. You need a bit of time to get in and bed yourself into a game, don't you? I think that after the goal, it would have been a good decision to have made those changes perhaps a little bit early and bring those fresh legs on. You got to remember, we've already spoken about how there was an opportunity because, albeit it was the Liverpool side that has the strength and depth to rotate, that is a side that's been through the mill, been through the ringer, hasn't it, for every game this season, and had already played 2 games that gone to the death in the week ahead, and they also had probably some degree of psychological scars from having repeatedly lost 2-goal leads throughout this season. So being 2-1 with Everton on the front foot, I wonder if that was a point maybe to bring on a Tyler Diblin or a Charlie Alcaraz. I think Moyes has got some questions to try and get to the bottom of. I think with how he configures that attack, and maybe it's only when you come up against these the bigger sides in the league in terms of where they're at the moment. But there's just a few. Everton, there's only so much he could do in the summer, but there are a few clear areas, I think, where Everton are getting held back a little bit, and one of them is clearly fullback. Like, they're just not getting any attacking threat from the fullback up. So Brian did a few nice shimmies on the right, like he's got better going forward, and Mikalenko's got better going forward under Moyes as well, but they're just not fullbacks that can attack. Save for the back ball to the back post where you hope O'Brien can tower over a right back, which is over the left back, which is what they tried to do a little bit towards the end. Yeah, they're so limited, and I just think that when you got Jack Grealish on the ball, we see so often he draws 2 men to him and he stands them up on the corner of the area, and it was so obvious, it was so apparent. I saw Moyes kind of turn away with his head in his hands on a couple of occasions at this on Saturday, that he draws those players onto the edge of the box, and then it's just a gulf of space down that left flank towards where you want your left back to overlap. and you could see Mykolenko just doesn't want to do it or doesn't feel confident enough to do it. And when you're chasing the game, it's just there. Grealish has done the hard work. He's created that space to send you into it.
Was that in the second half?
It's the second half, yeah. He did it a couple of times, and the one time he did do it, the one time that Grealish did make the run, he checked back, and it was just, and then Moyes just turned around, and it was just like, what are you doing? Just go for the jugular.
He wasn't even close to being offside if he'd overlapped as well. I think I remember
this is it. Like he's creating that opportunity for those players to get beyond him and then get behind the defence and put a really dangerous ball in, the type of ball that maybe a Beto or a Barry can feed off. So I'd be really interested in seeing whether or not you could. Like, I think if you were to, obviously, an Anthony is a more attacking left back. Obviously, we know that we lose out defensively there. You know, a Dwight McNeil, I don't know if I've spoken about it on this, but certainly written about it. Like, you kind of wonder if you could maybe convert him into a left back or a left wing back. And, you know, if you had him overlap in the last 10 minutes of a game where you're chasing.
He's never going to do it, though. I agree with you.
But I agree with you on this point. I just think, you just need to work out those solutions. I also wonder a little bit whether. I'm starting to wonder a little bit whether now's a good time to give Dibbling more minutes and start off with that natural right-sided player on the right of midfield. And I wonder if, and I don't know if this is a controversial claim or not, because he's a very good player and I think he's had a good start to the season. But I wonder if you maybe either take Dewsbury Hall out of the starting lineup for a little bit or move him further back as an 8 and just give Grealish a chance to sit in the number 10, because he can go both ways, and then you put Ndiaye on the left. I think Ndiaye's had a good start to the season on the right, but he's nowhere near as effective on the right as he is on the left. Have him running at players on the left, have Dibbling running at players on the right. So when you've got someone like a Grealish who's got the ball on the edge of the area, he can go both ways, and he's got players overloading on those flanks, and just creates different challenges for opposition to think about. You know, Dewsbury Hall's never going to beat a man. Like, he's great at knitting the play, but sometimes you wonder, alternatively, you could do it with Ndiaye in the 10. I just wonder, against some of those, better sides, or when Everton are behind, or when they're playing against a side, say like Villa, where there doesn't feel like any jeopardy in the game, but they just need something different to unlock the side. They're just held back in a couple of positions, and the fullback is one of them. Maybe centre midfield is another, because you feel like they don't, maybe when Roll comes in, he'll address this, but you feel like they don't quite have that solid base for the attacking player to really push on. Maybe it's in Barry and better with the interplay in and around the box. Maybe you could just try something a little bit different. Maybe even try and die up top and have like a 4. I'm not necessarily talking about starting games, but trying something different when you're in a situation. Obviously, Liverpool's a rare example because of how good they are. But when you're 2-1 down and you've got the momentum and you've got nothing to lose, and what you're doing isn't working, try something different. And yes, that can be a change in personnel, but maybe there's a change in ideas there as well. I don't know. Maybe I'm speaking nonsense.
No. First off, I feel weirded out that we agree on so much, because it doesn't usually happen.
Not happy.
I agree with everything that you kind of said there. We're going to have to move on because we're over the hour now. Just quickly, so just comments on what you just said there. So JFP_Mo says, McNeil does not have the pace for a wing back or a right back role. I don't think you could probably disagree with that, but although I think I agree with you, try him there. I think James Garner is better as in the centre of midfield. Michael James, says, we don't need to change Grealish, it works. We just played Liverpool, which again, you can't argue with.
Yeah, maybe that's fair enough, but
I would like to see Grealish
wonder,
move.
As I say, it worked to a point, and the point was he got us to 2-1, and then Everton didn't create anything of any note after that, and just maybe try it, or maybe put Ndiaye in the middle and have Dibbling on the right. I'm not saying that I have the answer here, but what I'm trying to say is, for once, for the first time in years, Everton have options, surely, and I think the one thing that we would all agree is the best thing to have done would have been to have tried something different with enough time for it to potentially work and make a difference. However you configure, whoever you bring on and off, none of us will know because what would have worked, because we can't replay that moment. But Everton have those options. Try it now. Try and use it. See what you can do, because you might just stumble across the solution that really does work there. And I say, this isn't a problem against Wolves. They battered Wolves. It was a joy to watch them at Wolves. I know it was 3-2. It was tight at the end. 2 individual errors cost them. A little bit of game management was a problem there. But the first 20 minutes in particular, but they were just so thrilling to watch against Wolves. As I say in my match report at the end, I just couldn't get my head around watching an Everton side play like that. And we've seen it in other moments this season. There's clearly so much potential in there, but say just against some of those other teams, or when, say like Villa, where you feel like you're comfortably the better side but can't quite get that goal. Just there is something different that you can try. Just try it.
I think it just goes back to us saying before, we've got a number of the pieces of the puzzle. It's just kind of jigsaw, if that's a phrase, together.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, and we're still working on that.
Yeah, it's only September, and given the money they've spent on Tyler Diblin, obviously the biggest sign of the summer, I'm sure he's going to get his chance, and it may well be tomorrow evening, but certainly in Premier League games as well, I'm sure he's going to be integrated into the side at some point. You know, he only came late in the window, later than David Moyes would have liked. So yeah, it's one of them, and he's a young lad and just finding his way. But I'm frustrated maybe he didn't get on earlier at Anfield, but I'm sure he's going to get plenty of opportunities in the months ahead.
Liam EFC, he's got it right now. He says, forget Liverpool, let's move on. So very quickly, we have got a game tomorrow.
Yeah.
Prediction, Chris, and do you expect the likes of Diblin, Barry, Alcaraz to be given a chance?
Yeah, first of all, I think you've got to play a team to win. I'm sure Joe go on to this. He was talking to me about it at Anfield on Saturday. This is actually a big opportunity for Everton in the Carabao Cup. A lot of contenders are out already, and I think Everton can shuffle the pack a little bit, but without weakening the team, you can still go strong at Wolves. I think this game potentially means a lot more to Everton than it does to Wolves. Obviously, we heard, it's part of football. You can't say it's wrong. The old I haven't won a trophy since 1995. Jibes Anfield on Saturday again, and Everton will be. It's live now actually. A piece with James Tarkowski, where he's talking about that they're really determined to do well in the cups this season, and they've seen what Palace and Newcastle have done last year, and they want a piece of that. They think they can do something this year. So you can move a few pieces around and still go strong, and that's what I'd like to see in terms of prediction. Let's be positive then and say 2-0 Everton.
Quickly,
positive. I think this is the biggest game of Everton's season so far.
Okay.
Because I think
pressure then.
Sorry?
No pressure then.
Because I just think that this Everton side is different to recent years. We've entered a different era, and what could be more... we're going to look for yardsticks through which we can define progress this season, and the most obvious one, obviously we'd love to go and win at Anfield and things like that would be amazing, but there's a realistic chance of doing that in the Cups this season. And the Carabao Cup now, you look at the way this has already played out, a number of those kind of mid-ranking teams that finished above Everton are already out. I think Villa are out, Bournemouth are out, Forest are out, West Ham are out. So I know they finished below Everton. And Man United, I know they also finished below Everton, but Man United are also out as well. Wolves are in complete disarray, pointless already. Surely they're looking at this game as just a massive inconvenience tomorrow. Surely they cannot be bothered with this. Everton have got a side that should be able to do a job at Wolves, already have done this season, should be able to do a job at Wolves with a few changes as well. I still think you make some, but you've got to go out there and put a side out to win, because all of a sudden you're through to the next round. A couple of other Premier League sides might fall in this round. Everton need a little bit of luck if the draw goes for them and a couple of maybe the favourites end up playing against each other or end up going out. I feel like there's a real opportunity of a trip deep into the competition opening up for Everton. And this Everton side, they're not going to need to worry about relegation this season. Like this isn't a season where you go in, you go, let's dot the I's and cross the T's first. They're not going to be a relegation battle. So these are the moments that this progress should be built for right now. Get a little bit of luck in the draws, because this is also an Everton side. We saw it. Obviously that was the Liverpool side that were desperate to win, and Everton caused some problems the other day. But whether this Everton side can go and maybe beat a Man City at Wembley might be a little bit beyond them perhaps at this stage. But I tell you what this Everton side can certainly do is they've got the quality to go and beat anyone that goes and half-asses this. If they end up against getting Arsenal at Hill Dickinson, and Arsenal have got a Champions League game and a big game in the Premier League coming up, and they play they play a slightly weakened side, Everton have got the quality to put them to the sword. And I just think this is a real opportunity, and I hope, I'm sure Moyes will, but I hope he sees that tomorrow with his selection, and I hope the players take advantage of it, because we all know how much kind of momentum and positivity a cup run can build. a little bit of luck, which they would deserve in the draws as well, to get through it. And this has to be seen as an opportunity.
And you'd have to wonder where Wolves' priorities lie as well.
Like I say, like there is Everton landed the first blow against Wolves in this game when they beat them at Molineux a couple of weeks ago, because in that one win, you could just see the way in which their paths has diverged since. That one win put Wolves into chaos state where it's like they're the crisis club looking for wins, and it put Everton in a position where it's like, oh yeah, Everton can go away to these sides and win by playing good football well, and they should have won more comfortably, and they're not going to be in a relegation battle. So these are the nights that we should be living for this season, I think. The opportunities to progress in the cups and do things that they haven't done in recent years.
A cold and wet, windy night at Molineux on Tuesday night.
Somebody's just said Moyes needs to rest some players for the weekend game. They're not playing till the Monday. They've got another 6 days. It'll be fine. Don't need to rest anybody. I think he will shuffle the pack, and I said he doesn't need to make the team worse because of that, but nobody needs resting.
Did you give a prediction?
3-0 Everton.
Wow.
I'm going to go 3-1, the result that it should have been against Wolves in the league game.
Barry, Diblin, Alcaraz.
Wow.
I'll take that.
Well, I've got to put a bet on that now, haven't I?
Absolutely. Go for it.
Regret it if it comes in and you don't.
Yeah. Well, there's been more stoppage time played in today's show than there was on Saturday, so take note. That is all for today's show. Final thoughts before we go? All good? You two will be Molineux on Tuesday?
We'll be there. I'll be in well, yeah.
And me and you, Chris, are going to be in the studio on Wednesday. I think Tony Scott might join us for a post-Wolves match. Hopefully we're talking about Everton progressing into the next round of the League Cup. Okay, well, we will see you on the other side. Enjoy your day, enjoy your night, enjoy your week. I've been Ian Croll, joined by Joe Thomas and Chris Beesley, and this has been the Royal Blue Podcast.